I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They sent me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. Langston Hughes. Today, my dear brothers and sisters, we will bring forth Black, Balanced, Browbeaten, and Buoyant, a story that will examine our people's history and how they stood up and fought through tough times. Get ready, for this will take you back into the 20th century, a time where the fight to justice was real, a time period different from today, and this will tell you just how they achieved great things and how their push should push us to continue to trust in God and fight for what is right. Please enjoy Black, Balanced, Browbeaten, and Buoyant. Thank you.
I am a poor wayfaring stranger. I'm traveling through this world of woe. Yet there's no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
My grandfather, on my father's side, Frank Page, was a slave. Evidently, he had this. He got some land, and so he had a farm then to take care of. Of course, we had to help where we could as children. Children were used to help with the farming. So as my father began to do the farm, planting and taking care of the farmers up to him, and of course as children we were assigned chores to help care for the area. At that time, there were no machines to plant and set out crops as we have now. When we planted corn or peas or beans, we had to walk in the furrows that my father had opened up and dropped the seed in every footstep in that furrow for our meat. It depended on animals. They had to raise pigs, they raised chickens, and we had a cow for milk. We had to raise pigs for the meat, and the chickens for meat and eggs. Sometimes those eggs could be used two ways. if we had a lot of chickens and the chickens were producing a lot of eggs, sometimes we'd take some of the eggs to the store and exchange them for something from the store that we might need. Well, we killed chickens as we needed them, but pigs and hogs were killed usually in the winter time. When it got cold, we'd kill the hog, kill a pig or a hog, and salt it down and pack it in salt. To get the butter from the milk would come, and the milk would, as you say, when it turned, when milk sour, it turns to clabber. And he had a churn, put that into a churn, and with the churn we beat the butter out of the milk. So we were encouraged to get an education in order to get a job that would help you make your way through life. And after working so hard on the farm, it was just hard to continue to live on the farm and depend on that to be a livelihood because the work was so hard. So I thought we found if you get an education, there are ways to get a better job where you don't have to work physically so hard. And that's why you encourage the children to continue to get an education so you help be able to take care of yourself.
Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought out.
Hello. When I was in the second grade, I attended a segregated school in Fairmont, North Carolina. Being 7 years old, I did not fully understand the commitment and the sacrifices that citizens of Fairmont, Robeson County, North Carolina, and the nation made for education of Black students. In the early post-Civil War years, schools for Black students typically lacked even the basic structures, equipment, teachers, books, and other resources necessary to ensure a functional education environment. Funding for Black schools fell far short of that for white students, as much as a 12-to-1 differential. But the original Rosenwald School was built in the section of Fairmont known as Old Field, and then a benefactor, Richard Bradshaw, donated money and land for the present, where the present school stands today. And the origins of the Rosenwald School, or Rosenwald School in Fairmont, North Carolina, can be directly traced to the efforts of Booker T. Washington and Julius Rosenwald. The original structure is gone, but the place that it sits now is occupied by the cafeteria in the library. According to the late Beulah Griffin Arnett, a teacher at Rosenwald School and Fairmont High School. She was the historian of the Fairmont alumni chapter of the Rosenwald School.
Hello, my name is Jenna Keith, and I'm here to give a brief overview of Rosenwald schools. Rosenwald schools are an important aspect of American history. Established in 1912 by Julius Rosenwald, the chain of schools became a national phenomenon, providing educational, personal, and health-related benefits for African Americans and school systems across the 20th century South. In 1912, Booker T. Washington approached philanthropist Julius Rosenwald with his idea to provide safe, purpose-built schools for African American children. The schools also function as gathering places for members of the community, highly disciplined educational facilities that introduce positive life lessons into the minds of students, and a source of community pride during one of the most difficult eras of African American history.
Many old school buildings in Pender County still stand and give their quiet testimony about the order of life here from the early 1900s to the 1960s. Booker T. Washington, founder of Tuskegee University, convinced philanthropist Julius Rosenwald to assist black communities that were willing to raise money for school building. Pender County's black residents organized and raised funds to build 15 Rosenwald schools.
First day going to school was right here. I was 6 years old. I was born in 1916. And the school was just built that year too. It was nice because it was brand new at that time.
Oh, they wanted us to do the best we could and be the best we could. And it wasn't just education, it was the whole individual, the whole person, and not just one aspect of it.
In order to be successful, they always stressed that you had to have an education, and they stressed that we should focus on learning, do our best, and everything else will come together.
Everyone should give reference to who you are and where you came from.
When your people praise you, set you draw near. Let our worship tell you, let our worship tell you.
Rosenwald schools continued to function until the Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education outlawed school segregation and forced them to close their doors forever. At the program's conclusion in 1932, it had produced nearly 5,000 new schools, over 200 teachers' homes, and over 160 shop buildings constructed at a total cost of nearly $29 million to serve 663,615 students in 18 counties of 15 states. With help from the Rosenwald School Fund, African American communities in Pender County, located in southeastern North Carolina, constructed 19 school buildings in 15 different locations between 1917 and 1929. Pender County's Rosenwald schools are also known for their longevity. Many of the schools remained in operation until the late 1960s, when schools around the nation were integrated. The Cane-Tuck Rosenwald School, which you can see behind me, is one of the best preserved Rosenwald schools in North Carolina. The building still stands in southwestern Pender County, and today it serves as a polling place and community center for citizens in the Cane-Tuck area of Curry, North Carolina. The two-teacher Cane-Tuck School was built on Julius Rosenwald's Nashville Plan, east-west facing. Even though the doors of Rosenwald schools are closed, the memories that people have about these buildings will live on forever. Historians and Rosenwald School alumni are fighting to preserve these historic structures. Many Rosenwald schools are falling apart and being torn down, and even the Cane-Tuck School, which is the best preserved, received much needed repairs in recent years with the help of community cleanup days and Lowe's grants. It is evident that Rosenwald schools had a positive impact on many people's lives. For more information on local Rosenwald schools, and to hear about the experiences of former students, watch the Under the Kudzu documentary on Amazon Prime and join local efforts to preserve these historic structures. Thank you.
Where it all began. After slavery ended, many newly freed slaves had to figure things out for themselves. Two of their many interests were a place of worship and a school for their children. Two couples who were responsible for working towards this were Moses and Susan Ford, and Joseph and Harriet Gaddy. St. Paul Public School, which was located across from the church, helped with the church's future growth and development. I can only imagine how much of a blessing the church was for the newly freed slaves who may have lacked the knowledge, and funds to accomplish this historic foundation.
Sing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on, to victory is won.
I've been free from slavery, but for years we're left to our own devices trying to figure it out. The priority was, how do we put food on the table and how do we support our families? That was a priority. And O.W. Gurley took upon this huge opportunity to secure 40 acres of land. And this land was given out by the government when they were taking land from the Native Americans and giving it out to people who would help the United States push its westward expansion. He understood that in the Deep South, there were very little opportunity for black folks to do anything. He wanted to take this land that he got and he wanted to, loan his own money out to other black entrepreneurs and loan other money and to bring other entrepreneurs into Greenwood, Oklahoma, where they would be able to start businesses. Now, in Greenwood, Oklahoma, it's, historically written that there were barbershops, salons, hotels, a pool hall, taxi services, bus services, schools, lawyers, dentists, bankers, who were giving out other loans, giving out opportunities for black families to come and they could thrive. And in this time period of this thriving economic utopia, and I love to keep saying that word because that's what it was, that the dollar passed around 19 hands before it left the community. Last summer, when all of the uprisings were happening with Black Lives Matter, you see a lot of grassroots organizations and you see a lot of corporations really take a stance and say we have to support black-owned businesses. We have to support HBCUs. We have to support black institutions, because when we support ourselves, we all thrive. And that is pretty much, in wraps, the significance of the Black Wall Street.
Henry and Sarah Tupper arrived in Raleigh, North Carolina in October of 1865, resolved to provide educational opportunities for former slaves. In December of 1865, Tupper gathered 6 ex-slaves in his first theology class. 10 years later, Shaw University was chartered. A neighborhood called South Park soon developed around Shaw University. With its churches, stores, and other businesses, South Park became an enclave for the new African-American middle class during the early 20th century. The predominantly black neighborhoods of College Park and Idlewild grew in proximity to St. Aug University. They were characterized by modest working-class houses on small lots. By 1910, the area had become a vibrant neighborhood with many people owning their own homes. During Jim Crow, black businesses were increasingly excluded from the downtown area. One notable exception was Hargis Street on the northern edge of Raleigh's Moore Square. During the 20s, the section of Hargis Street between South Wilmington and South Blunt Street became known as Black Main Street. This was home to nearly 50 black-owned businesses. However, most of those businesses were swept away under the banner of urban renewal in the 60s. While white mob violence squashed black entrepreneurship in southern cities like Wilmington, North Carolina, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, black business flourished in Durham in the first half of the 20th century, creating a vibrant African-American middle class. The Hayti neighborhood, which was first formed by freedmen on the southern edge of the city, began to develop into a thriving black business and residential district. The community grew around St. Joseph A&E Church. It was bordered by the 4-block district on Perry Street. This was known as Black Wall Street. At its height, some 200 black-owned businesses filled this area. W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington both praised the communities as models for African-American neighborhoods. Present-day Central University was established in Hayti in 1910 and became the first state-supported liberal arts college for African Americans in 1925. In the early decades of the 1900s, Durham acquired a national reputation for entrepreneurship. Businesses owned by Black African Americans lined Paris Street. Among them were NC Mutual Life Insurance Company and Mechanics and Farmers Bank.
Straight from the places our God where we met thee. Let's our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee.
We're talking today on our history and situations that have come and gone. One of the situations or topics that rarely gets an opportunity to be expounded upon is the black growth and the destruction or taking away or the taking away of the advantages and or the growth of our own black communities after Reconstruction. It is from the points of being from Wilmington, North Carolina, which was a central place or one of the largest cities of North Carolina at one period, where blacks had much control, not just by themselves, but as a coalition of the community. The United States, coming out of the Civil War, went through a period of Reconstruction. And it was during these times that so many blacks gained opportunities from the political arena to the business arena to the agriculture arena to all phases of U.S. growth, because the United States was a young nation still growing. Unfortunately, there were those of the societies of the United States who did not choose or were not pleased with the growth or the empowerment that so many blacks were achieving and growing into. Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, had a situation where you had doctors, professors, lawyers, people of professional, all the way down to people who were of the agricultural community that were getting stronger and stronger and more cohesive in their upward movement. The problem with that for the rest of the nation, or so many other parts of the nation, was jealousy. Jealousy that the blacks could take what was denied of them, and in spite of being pushed away, they made a coalition that they can come together. This caused much jealousy, because keep in mind, so many of those who did not want to see us improve, they came from places and spaces wherein they did not have the education. They did not have the wherewithal. They had lived on our backs and climbed up to their wealth or their power through us. And now that we are moving away, or we're gaining our own, or we're becoming more empowered within our own community, they became jealous and or they became threatened, because their way of economic growth was starting to be challenged. Because just as we see today, whenever we as a nation come together and we can cause the effects of presidents and different persons of governmental offices to be changed or updated, it causes some who have had the situations in their power or to their advantage to be threatened. They fought back to the point that they came in and they burned down that whole sector of the city. As did happen in Wilmington and or other places and towns throughout the whole southern region of the United States, the same kind of destruction and or anti-movement came about. Ergo, where we are today, where we stand today, we as a nation, a black nation, people of this nation who are black, we need to not forget how we were treated and from where we came. Because just as we came through on this past election, we saw our strength came to the front of what we can do. The nation has awakened to what we can do. Just as back then, they can take it away. If we're not careful, if we don't stay on top of it, it can be taken away from us again. Don't let our achievements become another Black Wall Street in your hometown. Thank you.
In 1898, over 1,000 African Americans owned some sort of property in Wilmington, North Carolina. On November 10, 1898, Alfred Waddell demanded the removal of Alex Manley and his newspapers, the Daily Record. Waddell also demanded the separation of Black citizens. The day after, Alfred Waddell scheduled a meeting at the Light Infantry, and 500 white men attended. When Waddell didn't receive a response from the Committee of Colored, he used the amount of people to his advantage. He led the angry mob to Manley newspaper office, and the crowd became larger as they walked. Eventually, the crowd gained 2,000 people. Once the group reached the printing press, they burned the building down and destroyed it. The mob spread in the city and eventually went after the African American citizens. The Black families gathered weapons to defend themselves from violence. At around 11 a.m. in a Black community, a gun battle broke out. They destroyed and shot at the homes and buildings. During the violence, Waddell was elected mayor by other white supremacists and leaders of City Hall. Hours after he was elected, he put out a warning for all African American citizens that if they didn't leave the city, they'd be faced with physical harm. Most African American people left the city and went to find other homes. Ones who couldn't find anything hid in a nearby forest. Any African American person that entered the city after the riot would be faced with severe racism and low pay. The official death toll of the riot was 25 African Americans, but it is highly suspected that many Blacks were killed and dumped in lakes. In the 1900s, the Democrats regained control of the governor's office and eliminated Black voting rights. This eventually led to the segregation in North Carolina, which lasted until the Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s and 60s.
I think it's very inspiring, and I think that where God is telling us not to give up and to fight through anything that might seem hard. We all have our struggles in life, and those struggles make us stronger. Those struggles make us smarter, and God helps us to get through those things. That if I believe in God and I keep striving through, that He will lift me up with His right hand.
Oh, yes.
And He will make me stronger. And even though people might talk down on me and may not like me, I know if I believe in God, it doesn't matter who does like me and who doesn't like me. Because I know God always has my back. And the people that do talk bad about me, they will see me one day and say, I should have never talked bad about him. God is the source of our living, and His Holy Spirit that comes into us helps us be better in life and improves us to be better and motivates us. The people that have struggled through it and were successful through all that, the slaves, they had God, so they didn't have anything to worry about. As long as you believe in God, you will be successful in life. You don't need anyone to tell you that you will or won't. As long as you have God, no one can tell you else.
Civil rights activist James Weldon Johnson wrote Lift Their Voice and Sing as a poem, which was set to music by his brother John Rosemond Johnson in 1899. The song is now known as the Black National Anthem in America. It is a protest, a hymn, and a prayer of profound significance for our people. We lift every voice and sing to express ourselves. We lift every voice to show that we have strength in numbers and we will not be silent. We lift every voice and sing to be lifted, liberated, and free.
Freedom, the power to determine action without restraint. Freedom, the absence of or release from ties, obligations, or restrictions. freedom. The ease or facility of movement or action, freedom. Frankness or boldness in manner or speech, freedom, a political right. Until we are all free, none of us is free. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the roaring sea. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod. Built in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place from which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright story stands. God of our weary ears, God of our silent tears, thou